Chapter 22 of The Enchanted Barn. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Gail Mattern. The Enchanted Barn by Grace Livingston Hill. Chapter 22. Shirley's sense of direction had always been keen. Even as a child she could tell her way home when others were lost. It was some minutes, however, before she suddenly became aware that the car was being driven in an entirely different direction from the place she had just left Mr. Barnard. For a moment she looked around puzzled, thinking the man was merely taking another way around, but a glance back where the white dome of the Capitol loomed palace-like above the city made her sure that something was wrong. She looked at the buildings they were passing, at the names of the streets. F Street? They had not been on that before. These stores and tall buildings were all new to her eyes. Down there at the end of the vista was a great building, all columns. Was that the Treasury, and were they merely seeing it from another angle? It was all very confusing, but the time was short. Why had the man not taken the shorter way? She looked at her small wrist watch anxiously and watched eagerly for the end of the street. But before the great building was reached, the car suddenly curved around a corner to the right, 1 block, a turn to the left, another turn, a confusion of new names and streets. New York Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Thomas Circle. The names spun by so fast she could read but few of them, and those she saw she wanted to remember that she might weave them into her next postal. She opened her bag, fumbled for her little silver pencil in the pocket of her coat, and scribbled down the names she could read as she passed, on the back of the bundle of postal cards, and without looking at her writing. She did not wish to miss a single sight. Here were rows of homes, pleasant and palatial, some of them even cozy. The broad avenues were enchanting, the park spaces the lavish scattering of noble statues. But the time was hastening by, and they were going farther and farther from the station and from the direction of the offices where she had been. She twisted her neck once more, and the Capitol dome loomed soft and blended in the distance. A thought of alarm leaped into her mind. She leaned forward and spoke to the driver. " You understood, didn't you, that I am to return to the office where you took me with the gentleman?" The man nodded. " All right, lady. Yes, lady." And the car rushed on, leaping out upon the beautiful way and disclosing new beauties ahead. For a few minutes more Shirley was distracted from her anxiety in wondering whether the great buildings on her right belonged to any of the embassies or not. And then, as the car swerved and plunged into another street and darted into a less thickly populated district, with trees and vacant lots, almost like the country, alarm arose once more, and she looked wildly back and tried to see the signs, but they were going faster still now upon a wide empty road, past stretches of park, with winding drives and charming views, and a great stone bridge to the right, arching over a deep ravine below, a railroad crossing it. There were deer parks fenced with high wire and filled with pretty creatures. Everything went by so fast that Shirley hardly realized that something really must be wrong before she seemed to be in the midst of a strange world aloof. " I am sure you have made a mistake." The girl's clear voice cut through the driving wind as they rushed along. " I must go back right away to that office from which you brought me. I must go at once, or I shall be too late for my train. The gentleman will be very angry." She spoke in the tone that always brought instant obedience from the employees around the office building at home. But the driver was stolid. He scarcely stirred in his seat to turn toward her. His thick voice was brought back to her on the breeze. " No, lady. It's all right, lady. I had my orders, lady. You needn't to worry. I get you there plenty time." A wild fear seized Shirley, and her heart lifted itself, as was its habit, to God. " Oh, my Father, take care of me, help me, show me what to do !" she cried. Thoughts rushed through her brain as fast as the car rushed over the ground. What was she up against? Was this man crazy or bad? Was he perhaps trying to kidnap her? What for? She shuddered to look the thought in the face. Or was it the notes? She remembered the men in the office and what they had said about keeping still and spying enemies. But perhaps she was mistaken. Maybe this man was only stupid, and it would all come out right in a few minutes. But no, she must not wait for anything like that. She must take no chance. The notes were in her keeping. She must put them where they would be safe. No telling how soon she would be overpowered and searched if that was what they were after. She must hide them, and she must think of some way to send word to Mr. Barnard before it was too late. No telling what moment they would turn from the main road, and she be hidden far from human habitation. She must work fast. What could she do? Scream to the next passerby? No, for the car was going too fast for that to do any good, and the houses up this way seemed all to be isolated, and few people about. There were houses on ahead beyond the park. She must have something ready to throw out when they came to them. Oh, God, help me think what to do, she prayed again, and then, looking down at her bag, she saw the postal cards. Just the thing. Quickly she scribbled, still holding her hand within the bag so that her movements were not noticeable. Help! Quick! Being carried off. Auto. Connecticut Ave. Park. Deer. Stone Bridge. Phone Mr. Clegg. Don't tell mother. Shirley. She turned the card over, drew a line through her mother's name, and wrote Carol's in its place. Stealthily she slipped the card up her sleeve, dropped her hand carelessly over the side of the car for a moment, let the card flutter from her fingers, and wrote another. She had written 3 cards and dropped them in front of houses before it suddenly occurred to her that even if these cards should be picked up and mailed, it would be some time before they reached their destination, and far too late for help to reach her in time. Her heart suddenly went down in a swooning sickness, and her breath almost went from her. Her head was reeling, and all the time she was trying to tell herself that she was exaggerating this thing, that probably the man would slow up, or something, and would all be explained. Yes, he was slowing up, but for what? It was in another lonely spot, and out from the bushes there appeared, as if by magic, another man, a queer-looking man with a heavy mustache that looked as if it didn't belong to him. He stood alertly waiting for the car, and sprang into the front seat without waiting for it to stop, or even glancing back at her, and the car shot forward again with great leaps. Shirley dropped out the 2 cards together that she had just written, and leaned forward, touching the newcomer on the arm. "Won't you please make this driver understand that he is taking me to the wrong place?" she said with a pleasant smile. "I must get back to an office 2 or 3 blocks away from the Treasury Building somewhere. I must turn back at once, or I shall miss my appointment and be late for my train. It is quite important. Tell him, please. I will pay him well if he will get me back at once." The stranger turned with an oily smile. "That's all right, miss. He isn't making any mistake. We're taking you right to Secretary Baker's country home. He sent for your man, Mr. What's his name? I forget. Barnard? Oh, yes. He sent for Mr. Barnard to come out there. Sent his private car down for him. And Mr. Barnard, he left orders we should go after you and bring you along. It's something they want to change in those notes you was taking. There was a mistake, and the secretary he wanted to look after the matter himself." Shirley sat back with a sudden feeling of weakness and a fear she might faint, although she had never done such a thing in her life. She was not deceived for an instant now, although she saw at once that she must not let the man know it. The idea that Secretary Baker would pause in the midst of his multiplicity of duties to look into the details of a small article of manufacture was ridiculous. It was equally impossible that Mr. Barnard would have sent strangers after her and let her be carried off in this queer way. He had been most particular that she should be looked after carefully. She was horribly to blame that she had allowed herself to be carried back at all until Mr. Barnard himself appeared, and yet was she? That surely had been the page from the office who came with the message. Well, never mind. She was in for it now, and she must do her best while there was any chance to do anything. She must drop all those postals somehow, and she must hide those notes somewhere, and perhaps write some others, fake ones. What should she do first? "Father, help me, show me. Oh, don't let me lose the notes. Please take care of me." Again and again her heart prayed as her hand worked stealthily in her bag, while she tried to put a pleasant smile upon her face and pretend she was still deceived, leaning forward and speaking to the strange man once more. "Is Secretary Baker's home much farther from here?" she asked, feeling her lips draw stiffly in the frozen smile she forced. "Will it take long?" "'Bout 10 minutes," the man answered graciously with a peculiar look toward the driver. "Nice view around here," he added affably with a leering look of admiration toward her. Shirley's heart stood still with new fear, but she managed to make her white lips smile again and murmur, "Charming." Then she leaned back again and fussed around in her bag. ostentatiously bringing out a clean handkerchief, though she really had been